And I think that's very detrimental to the efforts that we are conducting in the region to increase our own standards. So it's not just having our academics, our scientists, our researchers publish in top journals, but also having our local journals receive that kind of publication of results that will foster a more direct conversation with locally pertinent themes, and needs that address our local needs. But working with the smaller groups in a Cambridge style kind of teaching, with small groups of 3 professors, the teachers like my colleagues, my junior colleagues, but I'm also mentoring them. So we would be like 3, 4 maybe of us with 3, 4, 5 students. And so that would be a research team working on a research project. It's just brilliant. Publishing is essential to the scientific endeavor. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It all started back in the 17th century. I think one of the more negative aspects of the recent decades, which came around in the 90s and 2000s, was the ranking system for universities. It's very important to underscore that while we try to go global with our findings, we must always keep in touch with what gives us purpose in life, which is our adjacent communities and the broader regions in which we are inserted in. So, and those regions don't necessarily speak the lingua franca of the day, which is English. And, just a reminder that we're always just a small time point in history.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Publisherspeak Podcast. I'm your host Sowmya. Today we are talking with Dr. Vivienne Bachelet, clinician, professor and founder and editor-in-chief of the bilingual journal Medwave. Vivienne is dedicated to making high-quality health research accessible across languages and borders, and she's led initiatives that combine evidence-based medicine, bilingual publishing, and tech-driven integrity checks. In today's episode, we will explore her journey, her unique experience as an editor and researcher, and the next frontier in scholarly publishing. Hi, Vivienne. It's wonderful to have you on the Publisherspeak Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here today. You're such an accomplished personality. You've worn so many different hats. But for our audience, tell us a little bit. What do you do, Vivienne?
Right now, I'm mainly an academic. I'm a full professor at the University of Santiago of Chile. And I say that's my main activity because it's what pays my salary. So I earn my living as an academic, and I'm very happy there. I'm also editor-in-chief of Medwave, which is a general medical journal that I founded in the year 2000, the company actually, the publishing company. And then our first issue came out in January of 2001. So as an academic, I do research and I do peer review for other journals, and I teach evidence-based medicine. I have my lines of research. And I try to take care of myself so that I have a long and fruitful life.
That's wonderful. So you spoke a little bit about Medwave. That's the journal that you founded as an academic. What led you to starting a journal on your own? I know you've published with several other journals, and what motivated you to actually start the Medwave journal? And it's based in Chile. You publish both in Spanish and in English. So tell us a little bit about Medwave's history.
Yes, it's a bilingual journal, and it's now it's indexed, fully peer reviewed, and it has its impact factor and stuff like that. But it wasn't always like that. So when I founded it in the year 2000, I was coming up with this idea. Actually, the end of the 90s, really, I started thinking about the need for Chile to have a continuing medical education that would be appropriate for our geography and also for our living conditions and for our, per capita and things like that. So Chile, as you probably know, is a very long, long country, very long, long country. It has a whole bunch of different climates. And we have a very strong public health system. And one of its strengths is the fact that medical graduates, doctors, junior doctors, can be posted to very rural areas of Chile where there was barely at the time an internet connection. There would be one for the town. Now all of Chile has internet, but back then, it was a bit more precarious. And once these junior doctors go off to stay like for 4 to 6 years, seeing to very poor populations and they needed to still have access to continuing medical education and not have their training outdated, by the time they got back to do their specialization. All of this paid for by the Ministry of Health. So that was like something that I was seeing, our geography. On the other hand, I was very much connected to all of the technological advances that were happening during the 90s. So I was an early adopter of email and things like that. So I was seeing very strongly what the potential was. Remember that 2001 was the dot-com boom and bust.
We all remember that.
Boom and bust. So I founded my company as an online company practically, and before even PLOS came around doing their only online thing. So I said, let's bring together internet with our geography and with the continuing medical education needs of our junior and overall, physicians, practicing physicians in the country. So I said, let's do something like that will bring content, updated content to these practitioners uh, pretty much in real time. So we did conference coverage and clinical meetings coverage, and we did edited content. And we started with our first issue in the year 2001. So that's volume one, actually. And just by chance, I envisioned then to set it up as a journal with a journal structure, which was very forward looking because 10 years later, in 2010, I made the decision to transform this resource filled website with a journal structure into a fully peer reviewed journal with original articles.
That's fantastic, and I think there's a lot of importance that a regionally focused journal play, from what I'm hearing in continuing medical education. Is that a trend that you're seeing across the global south? Because there is this, I think, across the global south, there is the motivation to publish in the top journals, but increasingly we're also seeing regionally focused journals that are coming up. So is that a trend that you've seen increase in Chile? Are there more medical journals? Are more similar types of Medwave type journals? And what is your take on the need to have perhaps regionally focused journals?
I have not seen an increase in the number of journals. I've seen some longstanding journals change their name and try to partner up, to make it more robust. But what we see in the region is university presses that have a variety of academic and scholarly journals of different disciplines. And that is very strong in Latin America, especially with I'd say maybe only with the state-owned universities. So all the way from Mexico through Brazil and Chile. From what I know, there are a lot of strong university presses. Having said that, they are still under-financed, under-resourced. So their standards are lagging a bit behind, which takes us to when I was founding Medwave, there were other forward-looking people also based in Brazil from the government sector who envisioned setting up a sort of a publishing opportunity for society journals, and that's called Cielo. And probably everybody knows of Cielo. And then there was Cielo Africa and this and that. So it all started in Latin America. And Cielo was a big thrust to all of these small, independent, or society based or university based journals to jumpstart their technologization, so to speak, to be online, to have a presence online. They only had the print versions of their journals. And regrettably, what I see is that Cielo is lagging behind in many, many features that they should have revamped by now. And so basically, I would say that our academic publishing ecosystem in Latin America got stuck. That's my view.
You adopted technology fairly early on, and I think you had the foresight to make Medwave an online only journal. And I think technology plays a huge role in making sure that science reaches a wider community, right? And are there, and I think you're also talking about how certain things might not necessarily make the movement when it is not adopting technology in the right way as well. Where do you see some practical opportunities for, say, technology to improve the quality, the reach of of the publishing ecosystem as such, and what are some of the trends that you've been following that you are eager and you're interested in?
I have not seen many important technological uptakes in my region, and that's one of the shortcomings that I think we're facing here. I think there's a big gap between what could be done with not many resources and what is actually being done. So I think we are we have so many needs in our region, as well as in other regions of the world, that what we devote to science, including dissemination of science, is really a minor part of our GDP. We're way under the WHO recommendations for health, gross domestic product investment. So we should be spending much, much more in all of our countries and also in Chile, which is one of the more stable countries of our region, if I may say. So I think that the lack of, space, fiscal space to actually jumpstart a full-fledged ecosystem here is real. We in Chile, and I don't know about other countries, but we send a lot of our young brains off to Europe and to the United States, more to Europe actually, to train and to do master's degrees, to do PhDs, and they do all of that state funded, right? So with Ministry of Science funds. Many of them don't come back to our countries, and some of them do, and then they stagnate. So when you see a country investing below zero point 0.4 GDP points in research and development, you realize that, and that's more or less the average of the region, that there is no space for the publishing industry to thrive, the scholarly, academic, kind of publishing industry. So that's one of the reasons why we are also stagnating, lack of investment on behalf of our governments to actually put pressure on societies and create opportunities. Cielo was an opportunity. So we need another more modern and tuned to contemporary times kind of Cielo program to provide this dissemination of science. We also need to increase the standards of the quality of science that is being conducted in our region. And that has a lot of many different angles to it.
No, absolutely. I think it starts with the research that is being conducted to, the kind of findings and kind of uh, output that is coming out of the system. But have you seen like larger publishers, for instance, start regionally focused journals, and is that something that has happened in Chile, or do you see an opportunity for things like that at all?
Well, what I've seen, and I've told my good friends from the Lancet what my opinion is, I've seen actually more what I would call colonization of of opportunities here in Latin America. Specifically, many different big journals have, especially medical journals, have started their Latin American version, or Global Health Latin America, whatever. I don't even know if that name exists, but I'm just giving it as an example, right? So the Lancet has one, and BMJ I think has another one. I'm not too sure, but it has happened, and I think that's very detrimental to the efforts that we are conducting in the region to increase our own standards. So it's not just having our academics, our scientists, our researchers publish in top journals, but also having our local journals receive that kind of publication of results that will foster a more direct conversation with locally pertinent themes, and needs that address our local needs. And while The Lancet and others can provide an opportunity for those researchers, I think we should always partner with local journals and with local instances to actually do a technological transfer and not just, sort of like hoover out our best and brightest into first world and global north platforms.
Fair enough. No, that's an important, and I think you're talking about bridging that sort of a research gap that is existing, and journals can play an important role in making sure that the entire region is more scientifically oriented, more research oriented, more um, uh, stating the research findings oriented, right? So it's not just about doing the research; it's about also about publishing it and making sure that it reaches a wider community. Totally fantastic point there. Now you've worn multiple hats. You've been a clinician, a professor, an editor, an author, and a founder of a journal, and an academic. Um, so tell me which one of is there a favorite hat that you like wearing, or is it a combination of all of this? Which has been your most rewarding, enriching experience? Or I'm sure you're going to say all of those, but I was just curious about what has shaped your thought processes here.
I was a clinician for a very short while, just a few years way back then. Um, and I think it shaped me enormously, but I couldn't do it. I just, for whatever reasons, doesn't matter, now, but for whatever reasons, I get very stressed out if I make mistakes with patients. So, so that drove me out of being a clinician. And then time passed and I did my master's in clinical epidemiology. But of the hats that I wear, I think the academic hat is the one that actually by far suits me best. It is an incredible space to be in. There are awesome colleagues. I'm lucky to be also on an interdisciplinary campus. So my university is a medium-sized it's one of the top universities in Chile, not the toppest, but the toppest, but one of the top ones. And so, but we're all, all of the different faculties are on one site. It's a big, big site, but it's one single site, and that makes it really incredible. And I love serving in the university. I love giving back. I love, it's so the academic world, when you are actually tenured, as I am, gives you freedom, gives you space to create. You do research, you peer review, you author your articles, you teach. You create your own lines of research, but you're also in tune to the needs of the country because my university is a state university. And so we're always catering to the needs of the country and the region. You articulate your research projects with others, you can do interdisciplinary things. I mean, it's just fascinating. And being in contact with young people constantly, like we're now starting the first year, it's the initial year of a minor in medical research in the School of Medicine for medical students. And we've had a fantastic reception in first year students. So over a third of that cohort is registering as we speak in this minor to do research, and then that's just incredible. So I'd say that the one that gratifies me most is being an academic, but without a doubt, my passage through the private sector when I had my companies, and I still have the publishing company, of course, that was very important in giving me the experience of having to create value. And you must, you know what I'm saying, right? So to create value and sustain families based on your discipline, your expertise, your leadership, of course, and the opportunities that you create for your people and having, safe workplaces, not easy at all. And I think, and I would not go back. I would not want to have, to be on in the private sector exclusively. But it tributes to what I'm doing now strongly. It gave me a lot of professional insights that I carry over to my university work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're at the forefront of like sort of getting people to disseminate knowledge in science. So as an academician and as somebody who's also wearing a publishing hat and been very close to publishing, do you foster that sense of publishing amongst your students? Do you teach them how to write research papers? Is that part of you? And that's
Exactly. No. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what we do, what I do. I love mentoring. I'm at a stage of my life where it gives me enormous satisfaction. And I joined the university at the end of 2016. And by 2019, we had already published our first research papers with students. And from then on, most of my publications, not all of them, of course, but many of them are co-authored by my students. Year to year, they may change. Some of them carry on. Some of them are with us for a couple of years. Then they go on and do their internship, and then they just keep in touch. But that's all. But yes, and we make them write the papers. We overhaul them completely. Okay, so whatever they write, a little bit will be carried over to the final paper, but it's just, you know, pushing them to to really think and even now how to use AI, right? So, we do admit that AI is part of our arsenal of tools that we use to write papers, to write grant proposals, and whatever. So yes, I do work with young people on a continuously. I love that. It's one of the parts that I love most about my work. Not so much teaching evidence-based medicine, which I also love, but working with the smaller groups in a type, Cambridge style kind of teaching, with small groups of three professors, the teachers like my colleagues, my junior colleagues, but I'm also mentoring them. So we would be like three, four maybe of us with three, four, five students. And so that would be a research team working on a research project. It's just brilliant.
Now, one of the conversations that keep coming up is, is relevance of publishing in today's world, right? Because if with AI coming in and with generally a lot of information is more freely available with open access, with preprints and things like that, right? So, for a researcher, for an author, the need to actually publish with a journal is that going down? Do authors really understand the value that publishing is bringing to the table? Are publishers doing enough to communicate the value that they're adding to this whole process? Now, what is your take on that? I mean, as somebody who's been on both sides, as an author publishing with other journals, as well as a person who's running your own journal as well, where do you see the relevance of publishing or the value that publishing is actually bringing to the dissemination of science, and where do you see that headed?
Publishing is essential to the scientific endeavor. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It all started back in the 17th century and it will not stop. So, whoever thinks that we're going to go over to preprint platforms, that train has already left the station. Okay. So, maybe during COVID, we were all gung ho about preprints, but it's not where it's going. Publishers do add value to the research papers in a very significant way. It's hard to quantify the value, but it's there, and there has a lot been written about that. But what really drives the need to publish is something that I don't agree with, I'm very critical of, which is the ranking systems that is very pervasive, today in the university sphere. So all of the major universities, the mid-tier universities, the lower level universities in this, capitalistic oriented, even neoliberal kind of environment in which we're all in on a planetary level, means that we're all competing with each other, and that's not good. It's not good for science, it's not good for human beings, and it's not good for the younger generations, it's not good for the planet, for many, many reasons. So I think one of the more negative aspects of the recent decades, which came around in the 90s and 2000s, was the ranking system for universities. And that only set in cement what was already happening before, which was the publish or perish culture, right? So having said that, and I'm very critical of the publish or perish culture, and I'm very critical of the impact factor, but I am also a very practical and pragmatic person. I belong to a university. I recognize the need for that university to stand out. I know that they want me to publish in high impact factor journals, and I will try to do my best to do that, and to please them because I'm very happy where I'm working and we have a very nice working environment. And so I'll try to do my best to help my university further their standing and status, while at the same time always pointing out that this is a cycle in history and it might not be like this forever. Now it's like this, but we must always keep in mind that things could be better, should be better, and we should all be working to make things better. So, better means, yes, publishing, but not publishing to compete, but publishing to put, you know, outside to others what my findings are when I've done high quality research that is pertinent, in my case, to health needs of our populations. So, if we just keep ourselves close to humanistic values, that's going to be our North Star, and we won't get lost. We might do things that we're not happy with, so long as they don't, go directly against our values. Of course, I'm very much into research integrity, publication ethics. So perfectly understand that, we have to do whatever we do, publishing, writing our submitting, following certain rules and standards. And we have to be very careful with that, do it right, do it well, do it right. But don't think that that's the end of history. There can be other ways of creating value and and advancing science for the betterance of humanity.
I think that's a very, very powerful thought there and a very powerful statement that you're making. The whole purpose of publishing is advancement of science, and it's not this competition and this ranking that somehow it's many times associated with. On that note, I think this is like a great conversation that I've had with you. Are there any other final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience, Vivienne, today?
I think just stressing the need for advancing multilingual publication is very important. We've done something, with our platform in which we can do typesetting and production and peer review. In I do it bilingual, Spanish and English, and I think it's very important to underscore that while we try to go global with our findings, we must always keep in touch with what gives us purpose in life, which is our adjacent communities and the broader regions in which we are inserted in. So, and those regions don't necessarily speak the lingua franca of the day, which is English. And, just a reminder that we're always just a small time point in history. There have been other times in which lingua franca were other languages, either Latin or French or whatever. So, maybe it won't always be English. So, how important it is to preserve our linguistic origins and maintain them. So while we will communicate our findings to the world in whatever language the world is speaking in science today, we must also produce, and generate and think from our own language, like Spanish. Well, I'm bilingual, but in my country it's Spanish, so that people feel comfortable in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I just would ask publishers worldwide to fully consider promoting adamantly multilingual publishing platforms.
Absolutely. And I think with the kind of advancements we are seeing with AI, all of this is going to be super achievable today, whereas it must have been more of a technological hurdle. But I think, getting an AI system to translate so that people can better understand science in their own language, I think is so much more closer to us today than it has ever been in history. So yeah, so I think that's a great point, and I think it's something that we all probably should look forward to with respect to how AI, how the new technologies are going to change the way, change the multilinguality of publishing. Super. So thank you so much, Vivienne. It was wonderful chatting with you. A lot of very powerful messages from you, and it's wonderful to talk to somebody who is running a journal out of Chile, out of the global south, who has started it and has really transformed the way science is disseminated in your local region. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Publisherspeak podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That wraps up our conversation with Dr. Vivienne Bachelet. Thank you so much for joining us. Hearing about Medwave, Vivienne's work in evidence-based medicine, and her commitment to bilingual access has been inspiring. I hope it gives listeners new ideas about how publishing can become more accessible. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and share so we can keep these important conversations going. See you next time.